Hello, everybody. Welcome to 49ers Victory Monday. This is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and joining me today is Rob Shue, the infamous Rob Shue. The guy who comes on, he has such great content, and he's so good at what he does on here. And it's great to have him here on Monday after a big 49ers win yesterday against Dallas. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing fantastic, Jack. A hell of a lot better with the 49ers able to hang on to that one, squeak out the win, and advance in the playoffs. I cannot get past that point that the 49ers won, and therefore I am ecstatic.
That's right. That's all that matters when you get into this time of the season. It doesn't matter about anything else other than the W or the L at the end of the day. And the 49ers came away with that big W. And there's a lot of different things that we're going to cover. And we're going to start off with, I think, everybody's favorite topic. It doesn't matter what happened to the game when it comes to the NFL, especially, and especially with the 49ers. It's always about the quarterback. And so let's start this show off with our discussion of Jimmy Garoppolo and his performance yesterday against Dallas.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, right? I mean, one of the, if not the most polarizing topics in San Francisco 49er faithful lore is Jimmy Garoppolo and his performance. And this one seemed to epitomize just who he is as a quarterback, that you take the good with the bad. But at the end of the day, it's fascinating to me that people really want to fixate on the terrible. They really want to fixate on those things that are aggravating in Jimmy's performance and increase the frustrations. And it seems, at least on 49ers Twitter, it goes very negative anytime Jimmy has mistakes. I just got done rewatching the first half in doing my tape review, and I walk away from that like you could not give Jimmy Garoppolo anything other than an A for his first half performance. He came through in the clutch. And to me, it's just irresponsible not to look at the totality of the game. And yes, there were some maddeningly frustrating things that happened toward the end, but you have to recognize what he did in that first half, in my book.
No, and I'm right there with you. That's exactly the way that I feel about this because the 49ers don't win this game if he doesn't play as well as he did in the first half.
No.
I know that there were some moments that are we're gonna get to them as far as the second half goes, but the first half performance was about as good as you can get. And I was telling you right before we came on that for me, the first half, and not necessarily just Jimmy, but also the performance of the offense and the way the 49ers played this game. The first half yesterday reminded me of the old 49ers from the 80s. And if you remember those years, it seemed like the 49ers would go out and they dominate the first half. The second half, they kind of cruise a little bit more because they'd have a big lead. You know, on Sunday, they didn't get the touchdowns to really put the game completely away and just completely put Dallas out of their misery. But you know, the first half got them a big enough lead that the mistakes of the second half didn't undo it and become their undoing and lead to a loss.
No, I mean, when I went back and looked, there were a handful of throws in that first half that without it, we just don't jump up to that lead that ended up being the difference in this one. You know, Jimmy with a clutch 3rd and 10 throw to Juwan Jennings on that second drive, right? And then a 3rd and 21, able to hit Juice out of the backfield under duress, get them back into just enough of Robbie Gould's field goal range to make that attempt, add on 3 points. Come back on the next drive, 3rd and 3, pass to Debo, 3rd and 9, pass to Brandon Ayuk. He was delivering early. He was setting up the run game to be successful. All of the pre-snap adjustments seemed to be the correct ones in that first half. And really, that's to me the momentum that the defense fed off of. They came out, played with their hair on fire because of the way in which the offense was operating. Such a balanced attack to begin that game.
Yeah, and you just took everything that I wanted to say about Garoppolo's performance and laid it all out there. No, it's great because that's the way that I saw it too. You know, in the first half, he was money on third down. He was 4 or 5, and those 4 completions led to first downs, 3 of them, and the fourth one led to the field goal from goal that you mentioned already. And he was very good in the first half. And if you know, when you look at that first half, it just there was everything went right for the 49ers except for getting touchdowns. And it wasn't
Right.
even the lack of touchdowns wasn't on Garoppolo necessarily, because there was one possession there where they got down into about the Cowboys 25, and then they just went into a running mode and ran the ball 3 times and ended up a yard short and kicked the field goal and things like that. The only thing that concerned me was And if you followed me on Twitter during the game yesterday, you'll notice that I was getting a little nervous about the fact that they were kicking so many field goals.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember, Steve Young, I think it was after the 92 NFC Championship game, talking about how in the playoffs, when you have to settle for field goals, you're kind of setting yourself up to lose the game. And I just felt like that's more than anything, it was a lack of touchdowns that kind of made it even as close as it was.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And you wonder on that, it did seem a little conservative because it wasn't a long one when you did run 3 times and it became 4th and 1. That was one where I debated. My overuse of the term one, where I debated whether it should have been go for it, try to put the nail in the coffin early, because that same thought crept into my mind that even though you're putting up points on every single drive in the first half, and that in and of itself is impressive, when you're settling for those field goals, instead of being aggressive and going for the touchdowns, that can come back to bite you. It could have been an incident where if you pushed forward, got that first down, got it rolling, that the game isn't as close in the second half. But, that's rewriting history. The reality is those 3 points mattered, absolutely mattered. And so Kyle Shanahan clearly ended up making the correct call as they got the W.
Oh yeah, and I was fine with him kicking the ball and getting the field goals, getting the points on the board. It was more of just the fact that they weren't coming through on third down a couple of times there and had to settle for it instead of being able to keep the drive moving along.
Totally
But
agreed.
it was definitely good. And then before we move off of Garoppolo, let's talk. We do need to talk about the totality of his performance. We talked about the first half and how good that was, and then you have the second half. And kind of what were your thoughts when you watched the game back today of Garoppolo's performance in the second half? Was it as bad as we remember, or was it maybe a little bit better?
It 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 was pretty bad. I mean, it was brutal, right? There's a reason why 49er fans are so polarized on this topic. It is remarkable to see the dichotomy of the two. And that's what's so fascinating about Jimmy is it's not good Jimmy and bad Jimmy. It's all Jimmy. Like that is who he is. And it does seem to come at just the wrong time at points. And in this one, certainly the key mistakes in the second half, whether it was the wide open miss, whether it was the false start penalty because he got a little excited on snapping the ball before Trent Williams gets set, or the interception where it's just, a bit of an overthrow. They're so glaring and they come at such the inopportune time that I do think that we magnify them. And so I would say it's appropriate to give it the level of scrutiny that it gets because of when those linchpin moments come in the game. Had he done it at some other point in the middle of the third and the Cowboys weren't sparked on a comeback effort because of those mistakes, it would be different. But it's the entire team seeming to tighten up in some regard, and then Jimmy Garoppolo coming through and doing one of those things that lead everyone who's watching to scratch their heads a bit.
Yeah, it was rough. It was the second half was definitely rough. You have as you already went through, you kind of touched base on already. The missed Ayuk, he's wide open and he just sails what's supposed to be a deep out route. I know Romo said that it was supposed to be Ayuk was supposed to be running more towards the corner, but when you look at it, that's not where it was. It was just Garoppolo let go of the ball and it was sailed high on him. Tough throw that he missed there that really shouldn't be as tough as it was. And then you have the interception, and again he gets pressured. He moves out to his right. He has the receiver there, just misses him completely with the bad throw. And then you have the fourth down, and the fourth down on the fourth down quarterback sneak. Garoppolo deserves blame because it was his fault that the ball got snapped when it did. I also put some blame there on Kyle Shanahan for even calling that play the way he did. I
Yes.
like the fact that he called the quarterback sneak. I was saying the same thing before the play was called when they were doing the measurement, but I don't see a reason to move Trent Williams from one side of the line of scrimmage to the other. Maybe it moves the guys a half a shade or something like that along the defensive line, but we've seen the 49ers be successful on quarterback sneaks throughout the season, and you're in a spot there with the game basically in the balance. Just line your quarterback up, have them push forward they're only an inch.
An inch, a
Yeah,
literal inch.
yeah, and just pick it up instead of doing it. I just felt in that moment that Shanahan got a little bit too cute. Um, the only positive I will say on Garoppolo in the second half, and it's not even a big positive, but it is something that I think needs to be talked about, is The interception comes, the score becomes 23-17. And then at that point, the 49ers offense goes on a possession in which they hold the ball for 5 minutes. They don't get any points. They don't really move the ball very far. Garoppolo completes, I think it was the first third down of that drive. He completes a short pass uh, to who was it? I think it was Jennings for 5 yards to move the sticks. But just the fact that they were able to hold on to the ball for 5 minutes right there, even though it didn't turn into anything, that allowed the defense to get on the sidelines to catch their breath a little bit and then come out and really put on a performance. Because what they did there, well, let's jump over to the defense now since I just mentioned it. But
Yeah,
what the
absolutely.
defense did right there without Nick Bosa and without Fred Warner, that was high level defensive play for the defense. They came out and they just stood up, and they stood up throughout the game. But in that moment at the end, they definitely stood up.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that has to be the most impressive storyline for the San Francisco 49ers coming out of this one. You have to remember that this was the number one offense in the league that they were going up against. And then they played the entire second half without their best player on defense. So they're one man shy in their defensive front rotation. Going back to the importance of that 5 minutes, chewing up the clock, allowing them to rest, it was a depleted defensive line. It was a defensive line that didn't have the same number of substitutions that you're going to want to be able to make when you have Bosa out there and the additional body to throw at the Cowboys. And so it was critical for them to get a little bit of rest. And I thought for the entire first half, they played with their hair on fire. They came out, they got after Dak Prescott and really put forward a very impressive showing, again, against the most elite offense in the league coming into this, a team that was averaging over 31 points a game, right? So you really have to recognize just how special of an effort this defense made on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get on to the pass rush, I want to just touch base really quick on what D'Amico Ryans did in that at the end of that game with 4th and 11. You know, they had the holding call that could have made it 3rd and 21, but instead they decided to keep it at fourth and 11 and force Dallas to go for it. And man, oh man, what he showed to make that call that he did there on 4th and 11, bringing the house, basically telling his secondary, you're going to man up and play, and we're just going to bring everybody, and we're going to go for the win right now. That was some big old coconuts on D'Amico Ryans right there, and his players made it stand up for him.
They did. I mean, just to have seen what happened earlier in the game, right? I mean, it was man coverage when K1 got beat by Amari Cooper in the corner of the end zone on that first touchdown. It did. It took some serious stones to then make that call at a critical turning point in the game. And when it works out, you are the hero, right? Because it was a high risk, high reward, and it played out. And D'Amico just seemed to have, everything at his disposal in that game. I mean, the 49ers, both in the run defense and the ability to keep those two backs from breaking anything loose, making the Cowboys one-dimensional, and then the role players getting after Dak Prescott after Nick Bosa was out. It just so special, and D'Amico certainly in his bag, calling it, dialing it up.
Yeah, and before we move over to the defensive line and with that the rush that they put on, I do also want to when staying with D'Amico Ryans for a second, what he did there at the end of the game. I understand that some people might have been a little bit frustrated with the Cowboys' ability to move the ball out to midfield like they did.
Right.
But with 14 seconds left to play, I've never seen a defense line up the way that the 49ers lined up right there, where everybody's along the edge of the field like that and deep. I mean, I've seen teams play way off, but never something like that before. And they basically just said, we're going to let you do whatever you want in the middle of the field, and we're going to stop you. And that whole end scenario, that part of it too, for D'Amico Ryans and the coaching staff to come up with that. And it just all played out really well. And man, the Cowboys sure showed a number of times in the second half of this game that their coaching staff just did not understand the rules when it came to spotting the ball and defensive substitutions in the way that you have to work those out when you're on the field like that.
No, definite assist for the 49ers that the Cowboys were mistake prone all day. I mean, it just mind-boggling to some extent. And then for the game to end that way, it felt very fitting in that regard.
Yeah, we had the catch back in 1981, And then here in 2022, we have the spot. So there you go. 41 years later, completely different scenario, but that was a heck of a way to finish that one up. And then, the I put down here 49ers gold rush. The way the 49ers got after Dak Prescott yesterday, I know you touched base on the running defense, and the run defense was stellar. They gave up only 60 yards rushing before that final play of the game when they basically allowed Prescott to run for 17 yards up the middle. But the
Right.
first 20 carries, they held them only 60. But then on top of that, the pass rush yesterday, I mean, it showed up right from the very beginning of the game, the first third down of the game. It showed up throughout. But the 49ers pass rush was, man, they were on it yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, just all over Dak Prescott. I borrowed these stats from David Lombardi, so wanted to credit that. But looking at a 5-sack game, right? 14 quarterback hits on the game, season high 22 pressures. I mean, they were getting pressure on almost 46% of the snaps. They were all in the backfield, disrupting Dak's ability to throw the ball and providing coverage, much needed coverage for our cornerbacks, who, even though they have stepped up, were facing one of the stiffest tests that they've come across in Dallas's receiving threats. I mean, we cannot overstate just how good that Dallas offense typically is, but wasn't yesterday. And that's because of being able to disrupt Dak, get him off his launch points, and force him to be uncomfortable throughout that game.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that they're able to do that without Nick Bosa playing throughout the second half of the game, that just shows the depth of this team. I think you and I had talked about Chris Kosarick last week on the show when we did our show on last Monday, and the job that he's done with that group.
Amazing.
But again, yesterday it just showed up, and you had, the 49ers made that trade back in at the trade deadline for Charles Omenihu. And he comes out yesterday basically playing in place of Nick Bosa in the second half and gets a sack and a half, 3 quarterback hits. He forces a fumble from Prescott. And then the other guy that's a role player that you don't really think of is Jordan Willis. And he goes out, and it's Jordan Willis who really forces the interception. The interception from Dak Prescott, I saw some video of that today, and it's going to be in my write-up later on. But he's really the reason why you had the interception. He drives Smith, who was the left tackle for Dallas, into Prescott and forces the bad throw, forces him to get rid of the ball a little bit early, and the ball's off the mark, and K'Wan Williams is able to pick it off. But you saw that throughout the game. I've seen people talk about how, Prescott just wasn't very good and this and that, but Prescott wasn't good because the defensive line was getting after him throughout the game yesterday.
That's just it, right? He was impacted by the 49ers defense and just how impressive they were in getting after him. And I do think that speaks to Chris Kosarick again, and how special he has been in coaching up this unit and creating a vibe where it seems each one of these individuals is just there for their brothers, right? I mean, the way in which Arden Key spoke about the unit, spoke about the close-knit nature of that room, the way in which they played when Nick Bosa went down. These are the types of things you see from special rooms of players who are elevated by the coaching, by the motivation that they're receiving, and clearly understand just how important their role is within this defense as sort of the engine that makes it all go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun to watch the second half of the season, what they've been able to do on defense. They haven't allowed any offense to put up more than 24 points against them, and they played against some really darn good ones. Did it again yesterday. And then,
Oof.
moving ahead, they've got Green Bay coming up on Sunday, and I don't want to get too far because we still have some more to talk about with the 49ers Cowboys game, but I do want to touch base on this. Jay Will, thank you for the donation. This came in a little bit ago. Just kind of got to a better point in the show, though, to discuss it. He says, how do we slow down Green Bay's offense? Rodgers has been Rodgers lately.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think it's pretty similar, though, to what you're looking to do against Dak Prescott, right? You've got a high-powered quarterback who clearly, I think, when you're comparing the two, is the far better arm talent between Dak and Rodgers. He's the savvier veteran. He's got playoff experience, but a lot of that playoff experience involves losing to the San Francisco 49ers. So there may be a little bit of a mental hurdle for Rodgers to clear there himself. I would picture that the Niners are going to do just what they attempted to do to Dallas, which is make the Packers one-dimensional, take away Aaron Jones, and get in Rodgers' face and make him uncomfortable throughout the game. It definitely disrupts Aaron Rodgers when you can hit him continually. You can see the frustration come through on his face when he's getting disrupted in the backfield like that.
Yeah, he does, and it's going to be interesting. I agree with you. I don't think there's going to be. I don't think we're going to see some kind of dramatic difference in what the way the 49ers come into this game. We know who the 49ers are. Everybody knows who they are. They're going to get after you with their defensive line, and they're going to play solid on the back end. And when the 49ers have Jaquaski Tart and Jimmy Ward at safety, they're really good. The game that they lost, everybody likes to point to the blowout loss to Arizona, the second game when Arizona was out without a number of their starters. But I think
Right.
a lot of people forget about that game was that there was no Jimmy Ward and no Jaquaski Tart in that game either. And since Tart's come back and been healthy, and Ward's with those two guys together on the back end, they are such a better defense from a coverage perspective. And then on top of that, you have Ambry Thomas, who is just coming on like gangbusters over the second half. His performance through the last few weeks, he played really well yesterday. We didn't even hear his name called, really, and he was still, the ball came his way at times, but when you have a cornerback and he goes through a whole game and you don't hear his name, it's usually because they're playing pretty well. And that's definitely was the case yesterday. And I just think the 49ers can carry that on. I think that's their only chance, right? Is if they go out there and keep doing what they've been doing. I don't think they have to get all crazy to do it either.
No, I don't think that they do. Coming into this playoffs, I said to myself that the 49ers are that type of team where they absolutely have a chance against anyone they play in these playoffs. There's no team in the NFC or the AFC that you look to yourself and say, well, there's just no chance that the 49ers beat them. No, they absolutely have the talent. They have the talent at key positions. And if they play well, if they play mistake-free football for 60 minutes, they're capable of beating anybody.
Yeah, and I mean, you go back to the week 3 game, and I think both teams are different now than they were in week 3. But even in that game, Rodgers went off in the first half, and they were up 17-0, and then the 49ers are able to claw their way back and take a lead with 37 seconds to go in that game before ultimately failing. But to your last point, the mistakes, and the 49ers made in that game, there was plenty of mistakes that kind of led to them being in that position, and which has also led to Green Bay only needing the field goal at the end to win. So I agree with you. 49ers just need to play as mistake-free as they can. If they don't play mistake-free, they need to force some mistakes on their own in order to balance them out. Kind of like what we saw yesterday from them against Dallas.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And then, kind of just transitioning over, we talked a lot about the defense, but I do want to get back to the offensive side of the ball because what Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel pulled off yesterday, that was quite a performance from both of those guys.
It was. I didn't even realize until just a moment ago, saw on Twitter, I can't cite my source here, just scrolling through it, saw it, but someone tweeted out that it was in fact an NFL record by Deebo Samuel. His 73 rushing yards is in fact the record for postseason rushing yards by a receiver in the NFL. He just continues to do amazing things again and again and again. My favorite was the post-game presser with Kyle Shanahan talking about looking Deebo in the eye when Deebo basically told him, hey, give me the ball. After the E-Man interception, he said, give it to me. I'll take it to the house. Like it was so much confidence that Kyle was like, I had to call a play for him because he inspired me on the sideline. Like he looked me in the eye. I could see that look. I knew what he was going to do on the field. And that's just special. I mean, that is storybook stuff. There will be countless books looking back that reference that, assuming Deebo does something, some type of crescendo moment that people look back and write about. It will be that mindset, that dog mentality that he has. And I think Kyle Shanahan needs that a little bit. It reminded me that when Kyle is confident, when he's calling plays like that, where he knows that his players are going to go out and execute on something, he's very good. When things go the other direction is when I see him struggle. So to have Deebo Samuel and Elijah Mitchell there to balance that out and give him the confidence to make the correct play calls, especially when it comes to the rush game late in these playoffs, that gives me some confidence that maybe he's not going to get away from it this time around.
Yeah, it was funny looking at the numbers and the way this game played out. And you're right. Deebo Samuel, 72 yards yesterday was the most ever from a receiver in a playoff game. He actually now has 2 of the top 3 because he had 53.
That's wild.
In the Super Bowl as well. So those are number 1 and number 3 all time from wide receiver when it comes to rushing yards. in the postseason. But you had Elijah Mitchell. Really, he was the leader in the clubhouse in the first half yesterday. He ran the ball really well in the first half. Second half, they kind of slowed him down a little bit. He still was able to get some big runs, but not quite like he did in the first half. But then it became the Debo show. He was able to get, of his 72 yards, I can't remember the total right off the top of my head, but it was something like, here it is. Of his 72 total yards, 59 of them came in the second half. So he had 13 yards on 4 carries to open the game. And then he had 6 for 59, including the touchdown in the second half. And they just work so good in tandem. They're similar runners in that they're both extremely physical. Even as a wide receiver, Debo Samuel is a very physical runner, but they're different in that Debo, I think, has just a little bit better feel and ability to break it with his speed. There was one run in the second half yesterday, though, where you saw Mitchell go up. It was, I think, a run to the left up in the middle, and he was a step from breaking that thing and going to the house. I mean, you could see him
shoestring tackle.
Yeah, get tripped up at the end. But that duo is extremely important to the 49ers. And since we were talking about the Green Bay Packers and the 49ers earlier, following up on Jay Will's comment, the combination of Debo Samuel and Elijah Mitchell against the Packers in week 3, 0 yards on 2 carries because Elijah Mitchell was not on the field. He wasn't active that day. He had hurt his shoulder against Philadelphia the week before. So that just shows you, again, how much different these teams are from then to now. And it's going to be fun to see how the 49ers can work that out and work that into their game plan going into Lambeau on Sunday.
That will make a huge difference in between the two outcomes, at least one would think. And I go back to this issue of confidence. Again, I think it is so critical that Kyle Shanahan has found confidence in the rookie running back as well as what he obviously has in Debo Samuel, because it allows him to be much more creative and confident in his play calling. And the difference between Kyle Shanahan when he's confident out in front of teams, doing things creatively and attacking weakness, there is such a difference. And you see it in when he tightens up a bit. As the game shifted in this one against Dallas, as the mistakes started to pile up, you could sense that Kyle did tense up a bit, and that tenseness feeds over into the offense. I certainly believe that there's a correlation between when Kyle tenses up and starts to clench his cheeks a bit, you see that reflect in Jimmy Garoppolo as well. I do think that it begins at the top, and when Kyle has that confidence, so does the offense. When Kyle tightens up, as does the offensive unit in its totality, and that's where things start to snowball in the wrong direction. To have the rookie running back that he can lean on through the rest of these playoffs and continue to call and dial up run plays, I do think that is a huge boon for the San Francisco 49ers to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think over here, you mentioned it. You just mentioned, I think somebody in the comments section also mentioned about Shanahan's performance in the second half and maybe tightening up and tensing up in late in games. And, I don't know if I really saw that yesterday as much as I just saw some other than the 4th and inches play call getting a little cute there. I don't know if I saw him, if it was on Shanahan necessarily, or if it was on his players just not executing. And I hate to say that because that's one of the things I think sometimes that coaches use to get out of their mistakes is
Right.
Talk about execution. But, the first possession of the second half, the 49ers are facing 3rd and 1. They're running the ball pretty well. And instead of just going to what's been working for him and sticking with the run and trying to stuff it in there to get the first down, he calls a pass, and you have Garoppolo miss an open receiver in Jennings. I think he was open on that throw. Actually, no, he wasn't open. It was covered pretty well. That's the one that he threw away because I remember now that the announcers were praising him for choosing to throw it away instead of trying to force it in there. But then, after that, you have the 3rd and 10, and Ayuk is wide open for a big play. You get the miss by the quarterback. The next one is the interception on the 2nd and 10 play. And then you have the long drive and so on and so forth. I think yesterday in the second half, part of the problem for the 49ers offense in the second half was they got the ball to start the game, meaning that now that gives the Cowboys the ball to start off. And the Cowboys held onto the ball really, really well in the second half. It was it was a complete flip from the first half. I think the 49ers held the ball for like 19 minutes in the first half.
They did.
And then the game comes to an end, and it's only like a 3.3 game 3-minute difference between the two. So I think that that's part of it too. They just weren't on the field as much, and then you have a quarterback miss some throws that shouldn't be missed, and that ultimately goes back to the coach.
I think you make a good point about that. To me, it's probably the recency bias of that last fourth down shift, which just felt like an unnecessary risk, an unnecessarily complicated adjustment to what was needing 1 inch. And I think that decision reflects on everything else. But as you roll through that, I agree with all of your takes in that it was really failure to execute on a lot of those earlier mistakes that then ended up piling on. You could question his role, Kyle Shanahan's role with Coach Hightower and the special team struggles, but that's sort of a whole nother bag to get into. I do think I'm probably over-analyzing that fourth down shift. And to be honest, it worked. I mean, when you go back and watch it and look at the alignment prior to the shift and then the alignment post-shift, it very clearly did give the 49ers a little bit of an edge. But again, you only needed 1 inch. I'm with you earlier when you stated that's when you just go out and physically demand of your team to get that inch, prove that you're the better team, end the game. Like that's a battle of wills at that point. You just ask your guys to go out and do what's needed.
Yeah. Wasn't there a movie, wasn't there a movie where the coach is yelling about, we fight for that inch, we live for that inch or something? Wasn't that
yes,
any given,
that is Al Pacino with that one, Any Given Sunday.
Yeah, so I think we need to get Al on the phone with Jimmy or with Kyle before the next game in Green Bay.
That's right. That's a great speech.
It is. It's a really good one.
I may have to do a dramatic reenactment of that speech after you reminded me of that this week. I may have to do a reading.
There you go. There you go. And who better to do it than you? Because you come up with some really good cinematic quality when it comes to YouTube and your ability to do that kind of stuff. Way better than me. Trust 100% better than me. That's for darn sure. And then the other thing to talk about that I wanted to hit on was this came from the special teams trouble. You had a really good tweet earlier today about this, and the special teams have been hammered for the 49ers, and I'm right there with hammering them. And the special teams unit yesterday really almost lost the game for the 49ers on yesterday, right? With their inability to deal with punt returns. You have the personal foul on the roughing the kicker on the opening punt of the second half, and then you have the fake punt early in the fourth quarter. And just give us your thoughts on the special teams issues, and kind of, if you could, just throw out that little stat you threw out when it came to their troubles on Twitter.
I may not have that stat at the handy, but it is. I mean, it's crazy, right? You ask them, basically, it is, hey, don't lose a game for us. Just don't do anything that will lose the game for us. But it almost ended up costing us the game. I mean, it is maddeningly frustrating for me to watch that, to have the running into the kicker on 4th and 15, where it just felt like being overly aggressive at that point. The 49ers had the momentum. Just no doubt about it. They were the ones that were moving the ball consistently. The defense was playing with their hair on fire. You had forced them into a punt. It was already going to be very positive field position for the 49ers based on where they were punting from. And you get aggressive, right? You say to yourself, we're going to go for a kill shot here. And it was unnecessary risk where the upside wouldn't have changed the game as much as the downside did change the game in giving Dallas continued life. And then the fake punt as well, where it seemed so obvious to everyone watching. I'm yelling at the TV, watch for the fake punt, watch for the fake punt. And it clearly, that's what they aligned for, right? I mean, they left the base defense out there in that effort, but you get Josh Norman, his head turned around the wrong way. It just makes it look easy. But to me, it's again, the complete picture. It's about balancing it out. And I referenced it to the Jimmy Garoppolo comparison we were doing earlier, wherein if you look at just Jimmy's second half performance, yeah, you could get really upset. But when you look at the entire game, you have to balance it out. You have to take the good with the bad. And you obviously have Robbie Gould coming through in the clutch on this one. So to me, you got to look at special teams in the totality that way.
Yeah, and that's exactly you took the long road to exactly what I was wanting you to hit, because I think that was it, right? You had Jimmy Garoppolo up and down all over the place, people screaming about his game, when in reality he helped the 49ers win. And you had the same thing with the 49ers special teams, although it was a little bit different, couple different units that dealt with this. But you had, the awful play on the from the punt return unit. Their coverage didn't, when the Cowboys returned the ball, they usually got pretty good field position out of it when they weren't able to get the ball into the end zone on those kicks. And uh, but at the same time, you have Robbie Gould go out and he hits 250 plus yard field goals. I mean, when was the last time we've seen Robbie Gould hit 250 plus yard field goals in a single game?
Unbelievable.
And it wasn't like either was close. He put both of them right down the middle, and with some room to spare. And so, you know, without those three field goals from Gold, we're talking about a completely different outcome in this game. So for all the bad of the special teams, you have some good. And that's one of the fun things about talking about football, right? Is you have a full 60-minute game that people want to break up into little pieces. And they forget about the up and the down and the role that goes along with it, that plays in a football game. And uh, it's sometimes I think people wish it'd be 40 minutes instead of 60 or something like that. I'm not sure.
I agree. We do hyper fixate on these moments, and we can't see the forest for the trees, right? We can't blur our eyes to then see the picture in its totality. And to me, this one breaks out. It's an interesting one that throughout the year, I had different feelings on this special teams unit and on Coach Hightower in particular. And I still am on the fence there. I'm hesitant to lay blame at the feet of one individual. But when you have continual issues over and over and over again, you do have to come up with some type of an answer for it. And so I do wonder if going forward, there'll be a change there at some point, because it seems like the situational football coaching isn't occurring, right? That immediately before a critical play, grabbing whatever player is going to be in that critical position. So in this case, with the fake punt, grabbing Josh Norman and just making sure that eye to eye, you give him the key coaching points of, hey, this is a situation where they're very likely to attempt a fake punt. These are the core fundamental things we're looking to do on these plays. And then the question of aggression in going for the block as opposed to just getting on a punt return on the earlier penalty. All of that strikes me as situational awareness there. And so I do wonder if for the remainder of the playoffs, if Coach Shanahan has a come to Jesus type of conversation with Coach Hightower, or asks another assistant to sort of be a flex to help out in game with those types of communications, because it's continued to rear its head all season. It's not like this is something that popped up towards the end of the year. I mean, this goes back throughout 2021.
Yeah, and that was actually something that they asked to Kyle Shanahan during today's conference call, was with regards to the special teams play, because and they referenced a quote during the game. I don't know if you caught that or not, but it was I don't remember if it was Nance or Romo who mentioned how Kyle Shanahan's focus is just not to lose the game on special teams. That's that, and you even brought that up here on the show at the beginning, how the whole job of the special teams is just not to lose it. But
Right.
that's actually something that Shanahan had told them during the production meeting. And his response is basically, yeah, that's the way that I look at it. I don't, as long as we just play even football right there, we should be okay, as long as, because our offense and defense is going to make up the difference for the most part. And uh, but they're not getting it out of the defense excuse me, the special teams as a whole. That group's been really really struggling in some way, shape, or form, almost on a weekly basis. And uh, it almost cost them big time out in Los Angeles last week with the long punt return, and it cost them 3 points again here on Sunday. But luckily they had a big enough lead, like you said, because of Robbie.
Yeah, you go back to one of those early possessions for the Cowboys. I believe it was the second possession by the Cowboys, and they had a huge return, not huge, but a big return from Tony Pollard, who was one of the X factors I had coming into this game. I honestly believe that the Cowboys did us a favor by not getting Pollard more touches, but he had that big return that gets called back on a holding penalty. So again, the Cowboys shooting themselves in the foot, saving the 49ers. I tend to agree with Kyle Shanahan that all he needs is middle of the road play from special teams. But I think the follow up question I'd have in that scenario for Coach Shanahan is that's not what you're getting. You are getting bottom of the barrel, end of the league, right? I mean, 28th, 29th in the league as far as special teams play. And that's where you're dragging down the entire, the other two phases. If you could be middle of the road, if you were in that 15 to 18 range as far as efficiency for the special teams phase of the game, then I think you have a complementary ball club. Then you have a great offense, great defense, playing with, lights out, and special teams is average. But special teams has been atrocious, and some of these errors have just been so glaring that it's surprising not to be able to adjust and adapt at some point throughout the season. Again, if it were a quarter of the season struggles, then you would say, oh, well, they're still working at it. They're trying to get it right. But the fact that you can go back to some of the games we lost early on in the season, going out to that 3-5 initial record, I think that's the most painful portion of it, is the inability to turn it around. And again, I said earlier, I wasn't going to be too critical of Hightower because I do think he fought through legitimate injury concerns. Every time a starting linebacker or safety goes down and you pull a backup safety or linebacker from the special teams unit, you are taking a core special teams player. And that happened to the 49ers quite a bit this year. So for the coverage units, I'm a little more forgiving. But again, some of these gaffes are just so atrocious that you've got to do something about it.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned injuries and things like that, or just the pain that you go through during the season, and you're mentioning it, referencing it to the special teams unit. But I do want to touch base and kind of change the topic here a little bit, because there's a comment here that for one, and then I just think also it's important to get this information out. But Jimmy Garoppolo sustained a shoulder sprain yesterday, according to Kyle Shanahan. He in the second quarter at some point he sprained his right shoulder.
Ooh.
They don't expect him to miss any time. They expect him to be at practice tomorrow and throughout the week and play on Sunday. But it does lead into this question from KW. Thank you for the donation, by the way. And he says, "What would it take for Kyle to pull Jim for Lance in the Green Bay game, besides injury, of course?" And well, we know that right now there's a little bit of injury situation that he's dealing with, but it doesn't sound like it's anything that's going to keep him off the field.
Yeah, my answer would be there is nothing that will cause Kyle Shanahan to get away from Jimmy Garoppolo at this point, aside from injury, aside from inability to play. I think he continues to say that. We continue to second guess him, but he continues to show it with every turn. Every piece of evidence points to the belief, the very firm belief by Kyle Shanahan that Jimmy Garoppolo gives him the best opportunity to execute this offense on the level that he wants to. And I think that comes down to Jimmy's comfort in these games, Jimmy's experience in the playoffs, Jimmy's experience in the NFL, seeing what opposing defenses will do and adjusting to that. And Kyle Shanahan, again, I go back to what he has demonstrated as a head coach, believing that he has the answers to the test, meaning that when he comes in, he can smell defensive weaknesses and then attack them with the appropriate play calling, attack them with the appropriate manner on offense. And in order to do that, he needs someone who can execute the entirety of his offense regardless of their own personal strengths. And I think with the young rookie, Kyle Shanahan has to adapt his play calling to take into account Trey Lance's weaknesses and strengths, because Trey Lance is so early in his career. Whereas with Jimmy, he knows what he's got, right? He knows across the board. He can call every play in the playbook and dial up whatever he needs to at any given time to attack that defense.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with you that there's nothing that the only way that Jimmy Garoppolo gets pulled for Trey Lance against Green Bay is if he gets injured. That's the only reason. Other than that, it's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo's team to win or lose with. That's the decision that they've made. And to your point about Kyle Shanahan being more comfortable I think is the way to put it with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, because I feel like he knows what he's going to get out of Jimmy. He doesn't quite know yet what he's going to get out of Trey. And
Right.
that's actually that actually goes back to a conversation that I had with my brother during the game against Houston. We were texting each other. I was at the game. He's watching on TV, and we're just kind of texting back and forth. And I said to him, I think we're seeing that right now. Shanahan doesn't know what he's going to be getting out of Lance. He doesn't know what he's seeing. He doesn't have any feel for what he's doing, and I don't think he really trusted that what he's putting out in front of him is going to work, because he doesn't. It just felt, at least the feeling that I have was that the quarterback wasn't seeing what was there, and it was causing some issues. And you don't have that with Jimmy Garoppolo. Of course, you have the issues of his play and the inconsistency of his play, but I think at the same time, Shanahan knows all those things, and he kind of works his way around them, and he's learned to deal with it, if that's the best way to put it. He knows what he's going to get out of him. If he calls a slant play, he knows that if it's open, that Garoppolo is going to throw it to him.
Yes.
Instead of pulling it down and taking off running like we saw. Just different things like that. So I think that's where the 49ers are right now. Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't expect him to be back in 2022, but the rest of this 2021 season and through this playoff run, it's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo's team to take them as far as they're going to go or lose. That's what they're going to do. We're going to ride him to win or lose, whatever it is. It's his team to finish it off.
I agree wholeheartedly. I do hope that Kyle gets into his bag just enough, gets comfortable enough in one of these games going forward that we see a little package for Lance. Kyle's feeling confident when he starts to work in the trick plays. Things are rolling. So maybe it's the 49ers are up big in one of these, but I would love to see something where Lance comes in for a snap or two. It would just make the postseason feel complete, given the way this season has rolled so far.
Yeah, and that's one of the other things too that you mentioned, and you brought it up, was the last time we saw Trey Lance used in that way was against Green Bay, right? That when he brought him in for a snap there on the last play of the first half for the touchdown run around the end, and then he brought him in for a couple of other plays there as well in that game. And I think that's the last time we've seen Trey Lance come in the middle of a game and take some snaps away from Jimmy Garoppolo without with the game not in over with.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see if he gets the field. I don't expect it, because I don't think that Shanahan likes doing that. But if the 49ers are struggling like they were and it's 17-0 or something like that, you might see him get thrown out there for one play here or there. Who knows?
Yeah, I tend to think it would be if everything is going right and the Niners are rolling. I think he'll clutch even tighter to Jimmy being down. But agreed, anytime a game goes a funny way and it's not a close nail biter, you have the potential for Lance to come in, and I know we'd all love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to pull up this comment really here, because I think we both might have some response to it. I know I do. Sam says, I think everyone is wrong. Kyle knows what he's going to build in Trey Lance. He just wants his picks back. Stop it with he doesn't know. I think he's talking about doesn't know what he's getting. He drafted him. He knows. And I agree with Sam from the standpoint that I think he's definitely building for Trey Lance. That's why he's not playing this year. Everything is about building for Trey Lance for 2022 and 2023. That's why, although I thought early on in training camp and early before that you might see him be able to earn the starting job right away. I think that's why they pulled back and he didn't start. He knows what he's going to get from him down the road. But right now, when we're talking about he doesn't know what he's going to get from Lance in terms of from play to play in the same ways that he gets from Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think that's really what our discussion is about. And this obviously he knows him. He wouldn't have drafted him if he didn't feel like he could build around him. But I think there's a part to this where watch the game from Houston. If you watch the All-22 in Houston and you watch the All-22 against the Rams, watch the quarterback's head. Don't watch anything else. Just watch the quarterback's head. And what you notice about Trey Lance is that it's here or here or here from the time he snaps the ball. It's not like it goes here, here, here. You watch Jimmy Garoppolo and it's moving around because he's moving and kind of seeing different things. And that's a difference. And obviously that Kyle Shanahan is a tremendous play caller who gets this stuff set up. But at the same time, you need your quarterback to be able to make some plays just hit the throws that are there. And we know that he's going to be able to do that. Eventually, he's going to be able to take it to the next level.
Yeah, to me, it is Kyle Shanahan being very much a play caller by feel, right? When he gets comfortable, he gets on a roll. You can really see it. And he doesn't quite have a feel for Trey Lance yet. When you buy a new motorcycle, a new car, you don't push it to its limits because you don't truly understand what it can do. When you have your comfortable car that you've been in for years, you can take that thing around a corner at really high speeds because you know how the car is going to react. I think that's the same thing for the two quarterbacks, is that Coach Shanahan, even though it may be a little bit of a clunker at times with Jimmy Garoppolo, he knows how it responds. He knows when he goes one way, this is the way in which Jimmy typically operates. And with Trey Lance, I don't think he has that yet. My only addition to that with Sam is I don't believe Shanahan or anyone at this point is thinking anything about draft picks. It is all about the next game. It is all about winning. And the draft picks are a nice if they happen later, but certainly in no way a focus and in no way factoring into the decision as to whether they play Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Kyle Shanahan understands fundamentally just how difficult it is to win the Super Bowl in the NFL, just how hard it is to get into the playoffs. So I don't think he's squandering this opportunity at all by focusing on anything other than how they win the next game.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. That's one of the things that it's funny because you hear that brought up all the time. And they're not playing Jimmy Garoppolo right now for draft picks. They're playing to win a Super Bowl, and they feel like he gives them the best chance to win. And so that's why he's playing there. They're going to get picks for him. They're going to get something. They're going to probably get a second, third, somewhere around those range. I mean, if they can get a second round pick back for Jimmy Garoppolo after giving up the twos that they did, that's a huge win for the 49ers. So we'll see where it ends up.
Huge.
Yep. And then real quick, Kim says, Jack, I missed the Aviator headset. Hey, it's the same headset right here. It's the same one. I got this. The only thing is I don't have the little thing here. I got this really nice mic. Oop, as I shake my thing.
Nice.
I got this nice mic that Jesse from Hammer and Nails sent over to me. And yeah, that's why I gave him such a hard time on Twitter, because he's nice to me. So I give him a hard time on Twitter. Look at the way I pay back my friends.
As it should be.
So no, but that's really it. I know it was a great win for the 49ers on Sunday. It's going to be a short week here leading up to Saturday in Lambeau, and it's going to be a lot of fun throughout this week getting ready for another game. You know, I talked about it last night, but you have the 49ers beating the Cowboys in round one. Huge helmet game, right, when it comes to the history of those two teams. And now you go from that to the 49ers and Packers in round two. This postseason can't, I don't know if it can get any better unless they face the Rams in the championship game again.
That would be sweet. And honestly, I mean, even if it goes on to Tampa Bay, it feels like sort of a progression through the mid to late 90s, right? I mean, 94 against Dallas. Later in the 90s, all those matchups against Green Bay push forward into the Bucs cresting their own mountain in the early 2000s, right around there. And so it is going to be a hell of a road. The 49ers have a monumental task ahead of them. I don't think anyone is saying that they are favored to climb that mountain. But back to our earlier point, I truly believe wholeheartedly, not being a homer, that they have a chance against everyone they come up against in the playoffs. And I'm so excited to have a January game in Lambeau. I'm going to go to the game. This is my first trip of looking at my wall over here. These are stadiums that I have been to or yet to go to within the NFL. My bucket list there is to hit all 32. And I've gone to some now that are no longer stadiums. So my list keeps getting longer because teams just keep getting new stadiums. But Lambeau is one of them that I have yet to go to. And to cross it off in January in the snow, I mean, forget about it. That is just picture perfect, Jack.
Yeah, no, that's going to be fantastic to hear the stories about that trip and all that, because that'd be fantastic. My brother's been to Lambeau. He went to a game out there. Darn, it was a long time ago, but it was a December game. I think they played the Lions, and he was on kind of a guy's football trip where they did a few different stadiums, and that was one of them. But I've never had the chance to be there. I've seen pictures from there, but never been there myself, and that'll be a fun one. And yeah, I like what you're saying there. It's gonna be fun. This is the old timers trip down memory lane and getting all these new young bucks, into understanding what the real 49ers are all about, right?
Yes, on the way to setting new history markers for these 49ers, on the way to establishing the dominance of this year's team, we re-examine 49ers teams of old. And that's thrilling for guys like me.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to real quick before we jump off. You know what? I don't. Here it is. I do want to just recognize this comment real quick from Karthik. Says first time on the show, Jack. Subscribed and liked the video as well. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. If anybody that's watching this show, if you're not already subscribed, please do so. And if you can, hit the like button as well as we go through here. Rob's got some really great content over on his channel as well, and he's going to be going on at 4 o'clock. Correct?
Yeah, 33 minutes from now, I will be going live with Jason Aponte on my channel. We will be continuing this dialogue. It will be good stuff. We are going to be hyped for sure, just as we were on this show.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. I want to, that'll be the end of it for today. Just want to thank everybody for joining. Like I said, subscribe to my channel, get over to Rob's and subscribe to his as well. I think he's already over 4,000. So he's rocking it really good over there. And also get yourself to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com inside the 49ers blog over there. That's where all my write-ups are, new content on a daily basis. So thank you everybody for joining. Have a great rest of your Monday. We'll be back with content throughout the week leading up to Saturday and 49ers Packers. Have a great one, everybody.